And welcome into the Tuesday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley alongside Joe Rexrode, Jake Lyman here with you on this Tuesday morning. Hope everybody's off to a wonderful start. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Joe Rexrode, live in parts unknown. Joe Rexrode, a lot of concern about your status after the program ended yesterday. How are we doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm pretty soft. First of all, I'd like to apologize again. I think this every show I start with an apology. Is like how my computer's broken.
Yeah.
So if you see anybody who's watching this, like I can't put the screen like anymore back, so like I can't, and this chair is like it's a non-adjustable chair in my room, so like you're not going to get the top of my head, I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying, see, but it won't stay, see. So I went, and I think PA looked and said the itchiness is good. Yes, there's the bullseye, so antibiotics just to be safe, but I think I'm probably fine, and I was just being a big baby, and I just had a regular tick bite. But just in case, we're gonna knock it out. Did not stop me from. I put a little cortisone on my little boo boo.
Nice.
And I put a little Band-Aid on my little boo boo, and I walked like 2 blocks last night to go see let's see, Kieran Culkin, Bob Odenkirk, Bill Burr do Glengarry Glen Ross.
Nice.
Like, okay, sure. Gotta love New York City, man.
So Rexrode is alive and well today on the program. Lots of concern after the program yesterday about the status of his tick bite, whether or not he was going to get to his destination on time. And it looks like all of those things are in the affirmative of good news for Rexrode. I was texting Paul Kuharski yesterday about what all was going on because he was very curious about what was going on. And, we talked about the urgent care visit you had, the ability to get to the airport, to get to your flight all on time. I gave your odds for success at 19.4%, and he took the under significantly. So congratulations to you for really coming through and proving us wrong.
Well, I'll tell you about the airport. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but so I, showed up to it. I still haven't got my real ID, but I have all my documentation that I got the real ID. I have the paper copy. I brought my birth certificate. I brought my marriage certificate. I brought my bills from home. I brought my social security card, brought my passport, which is expired because I'm an idiot. But I just had this big pile of stuff, and this dude's like, well, the gate agent, he's like, okay, well, I have to, just put your ID. Maybe it'll come up green. I'm like, okay. So he took my non-real ID, put it through. It came up red. He just looked at me and he said, "Go, just go." I said, "Thank you." I had just put cortisone on my boo-boo, and things just turned for the better. What a day.
What a day for you yesterday. Jake Lyman is with us on the program today. Ian is out today. He will be back tomorrow. Jake Lyman, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing great. Up nice and early. It's a good way to start the day joining you guys.
We got 2 Tigers fans on the program today. Rexrode and Lyman, all in on their Detroit Tigers, who have the best record in baseball at the moment.
That's right. I forgot Lyman was a Tigers fan.
Yeah, just completely randomly. But go Tigers. Great start.
You're welcome. I am not like Paul Kuharski gatekeeping fandom, so the more the merrier.
We got a lot to get into in the program today. Ben Arthur from Fox Sports will join us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Titans and all things AFC South with him. An interesting trade idea that I heard yesterday thrown out there, and it involves a pretty prominent player on the Nashville Predators that we'll get into a little bit later in the show as well. So lots going on the program today. Joe, some college football stuff going on as well out there, which is going to be interesting to see where this ends up going from here. But, I am so tired, Joe, for the most part, of like laws and college football being thrown together at the same time. But here's where we are in the world of college football. So, apparently as they're trying to sort through all this NIL stuff, and I saw a lot of chatter about this last night, and Danny White's name kept coming up as well. So they're trying to sort through all this NIL stuff, and Ross Dellinger put out this big long thread last night of power conferences basically drafting a contract that would bind schools to new enforcement rules, require them to waive the rights to sue over decisions, things like that. Schools not signing may risk conference eviction. So Ross Dellinger put this long, big thing out about that. Andy Staples said, quote, I talked to Tennessee AD Danny White about the state law and what this means going forward. So Tennessee's got a law that's coming, and he's got Andy Staples got a column coming out today. And he just says, quote, let's just say that I doubt certain schools and states will capitulate as easily as the conferences are hoping, which is code word for, yeah, I talked with Danny White, and he's not going to do any of these things that the conferences are hoping that they will do. Joe, your thoughts on the ever-changing landscape in college football, and apparently these conferences trying to draft a contract that binds schools to new enforcement rules?
It's just, I mean, I can't. I mean, give me a clown car and just let's cram all these people into it. It's mind-boggling to me that they think this will work. None of these things are going to work. This Deloitte, judging the NIL deals, and it has to be real. Guys, you can't cap income. The courts have said this. You could sit here and try to have people sign a contract, to waive the school's right to sue over decisions. It doesn't matter. People are going to sue over decisions, and they're going to win. Like, what are we talking about? I don't. Again, I'm not going to pretend to be a legal expert, but I just know what I've seen, and it's pretty clear. We have gotten to the point where society, and certainly the courtrooms, the judges, look at these people rightfully, these young people playing this very lucrative sport as professionals, because that's what it is. They are laborers in a huge billion-dollar industry. You cannot cap their income unless they collectively bargain and agree to have the income capped.
Right.
So let's just keep wasting time with idiocy instead of just getting to what you have to get to, which again does not have to be a full-on, management, labor, full employee situation, but it has to be a collective bargaining situation. And you can do that in a variety of ways. We're just wasting time with this garbage. And it really, we've talked about this, right? But like one of the things that people want, obviously, they just want it to go back to, can we just go back to under the table and bags of cash?
Right.
Seriously, that's what, because you're never going to stop the competition for the very, very best players. With the schools that have to win, they have to keep their jobs. They want to make money. They want to win. These boosters who dole out millions want to win. So they are going to chase to the ends of the earth the top talent. That's always going to be the case. The market is always going to be there. It's always been there. This is not hard. But we're just going to make it hard with garbage like this. So we'll get there eventually. But in the meantime, let's all run around and play grab ass for a few more years. Great idea.
I mean, I read this last night. I mean, this came out basically last night as I was starting to go to bed, and I saw this, and then I saw what Staples put out there about Danny White. He's like, let's just say that they're not going to probably go along with this. And it's interesting. Here's another tweet that Staples had as a part of his On 3 piece last night. And the question just says, would the SEC threaten to kick out Tennessee or Vanderbilt for following their own state's law? We're about to find out. And it talks about, Danny White talks about the law giving them, quote, protections from the legal and structural uncertainties of college sports. So if the SEC and the Big Ten and all these conferences are trying to get all these schools, and I think the goal is to get like all 70 plus of the Power 4 schools to sign this thing where they're basically, you're just under the thumb of these conferences. That's not going to happen. Like Tennessee and Vanderbilt are not going to be the only ones that don't go along with this. It's just, as you said, a total waste of time before you actually have to get to the real problem, which is collectively bargaining at some point and trying to find a way to solve the transfer portal, which, as we've discussed 1,000 times, until you get those two things figured out, everything else is kind of a total waste of time.
Yeah, and it's just I'm just a little lost here on we're talking about the conferences, and usually what the conferences do is driven by Well, it depends on what we're talking about, but like sports specific stuff, usually it's driven by the ads.
Yeah.
And certainly the presidents too. But I'm a little confused here, and good reporting by Ross. Ross is on top of this stuff, does a great job. But I'm a little confused here by this idea of these conferences, and now we've already got an AD saying. I'm interested to see what Danny's exact comments are. I don't know if Andy's column is posted yet, but I mean, you would think that they would be on the same page, and this makes it seem like they're not at all. So that's good. That'll help.
Yeah,
that'll work out well for everybody.
always works out well. So just the latest in college sports and college football to keep your eye on there. We'll see what ends up happening on that front, but it's just it never stops. By the way, Keith saying we need to stop burying the lead and how's the tick bite. We already talked about it. Rexrode's fine. Tick bite's good. Rexrode is alive and well as we sit here today. He's on antibiotics. Rexrode's going to be good.
It was super itchy, I will tell you, last night. So, I mean, I'm now to the point where I'm just telling you how itchy my boo-boos are, okay? But it was very itchy. Right now, I have the cortisone. I put cortisone on again before I went to sleep, and I put a new Band-Aid on, and I don't even notice it. So,
I mean, I had people sending me yesterday,
meaningless medical updates ever.
I talked about emu meat. Apparently, emu meat is like if you end up with one of these allergies, emu meat is a flavor that's kind of similar to beef, but is safe to eat for these tick allergies. I had people sending me like emu farms and all this stuff yesterday. I was ready to help you today, so I'm glad I don't have to.
Well, I mean, look, I'm always up for trying another animal, and maybe, I mean, real frankly, at my age, like I need to probably like pump the brakes on the red meat a little bit anyway. You know what I mean? So I might have to check out some emu meat regardless.
I mean, it's red meat, but apparently this particular red meat is safe for the tick bite. Why that is, I couldn't tell you, but apparently it is.
But it's a bird, so
yeah.
But it just looks red.
It just looks red, yeah.
So, I mean, I've had the argument with Katie before, where she's like, "No, pork is white meat." I'm like, "Katie, it's not white meat just because it looks white. This pork chop, this is red meat by definition."
Rexrode is alive and well on the program. We'll take your thoughts, your well wishes for Rexrode, 615-737-1025, our phone number. We are off and running, and Rexrode has found a survey that really speaks well of Titans fans. Do we buy it, and what do we make of fans in this state who have just been through the ringer as of late? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Joe, you found a study that really speaks well of Titans fans out there, which I appreciate. Any positive news for Titans and Titans fans over what we've seen over the last couple of years, I think is good news. What have you found for our people?
Well, first of all, testing. Do I sound better?
You sound the same, but it's good. It's fine.
Oh, well, what the heck? Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, I've been getting bombarded with these emails, and this is from CanadaSportsBetting.ca. Okay, so we get some Canadians pushing, the Canadian betting going on, but they did this study on the NFL, not the CFL, the NFL. And it came away with the Titans as the number 2 most loyal fan base. Now, this is their methodology. Since 2000, the attendance trend in your worst season. Okay. So, you take it with probably more than a grain of salt, and there's a lot of factors. But in 2014, which was their 2-14 season, they actually, saw a 3.6% increase in attendance. The Titans did. So the best was the Vikings with a 6.9% increase in their bad 2011 season. Now, I will ask, as I remember, it was probably in this time frame, wasn't it, that the Titans were still holding on to that sellout streak?
I believe so.
And that was became sort of a controversy because it was like how, maybe a little bit of fluff in the numbers type thing going on. Yeah. So that's one thing where, you take this with a grain of salt, but the fact is, this does mean that in 13, they had less attendance. They had an average attendance of 66,000. They had 68.5 in 2014. So this is their, so by that measure, if a team, if attendance goes well in your your bad season, you're the most loyal, most committed, which is the Vikings, Titans, Dolphins, Steelers, Raiders. Dolphins in 2007, Steelers 03, Raiders 06. The least committed fan bases, the Detroit Lions. I would argue that it's one of the craziest fan bases around, but in that delicious 0-16 season of 2008, they dropped 11% attendance. I'm actually, you think from the year before. So they went from an average of 61 down to 54 plus.
Stunned it wasn't more.
I mean, right? Like, good for every single soul who went and watched that team in 08. My God, what an absolute bleep show. Then they drafted Stafford off that, though. So that was a decent year to go 0-16. So,
I think that was the same year the Titans scored about 80 points on them in the Thanksgiving game.
Yes. I absolutely remember that. So it's interesting because then you go through this list of the least committed, which again is just basically if your attendance went down dramatically in your worst season. You got Lions, Jets, Bills, Rams, Bengals. I would argue that Lions, Jets, and Bills fans are among the most fervent in the league. I don't know. I'm not sure that this is an accurate portrayal of Titans fans, and I'm not trying to rip Titans fans. I just don't know that this means a ton. But I thought it was interesting, and they keep emailing me, so now I can email them back and say, I just said this on a radio show. Thank you.
It is interesting, and to your point, I mean, the Titans, boy, I mean, when you start thinking about some of those fan bases you just laid out there, the Jets and the Browns, those teams had a lot of down years. I mean, at least the Titans, I mean, relatively speaking, it wasn't that long ago when they had a relative amount of success. We'll see if Cam Ward can propel them back there. But you have thrown the question out there, which is an interesting one. Yesterday we talked about which team in the fall is going to have the best season as it relates to the expectations out there relative to expectations. And you're throwing the question out there today, which fans in this state are the most loyal? Which team has the most loyal fans in this state? I mean, the pro teams are on a run right now, Joe, as we know. I mean, the Predators fans was awful this year. Titans fans have been through a couple years now, which have been awful. And now they have hopefully their savior of their franchise coming up in the quarterback. We know that Tennessee has a massive fan base. Massive fan bases and loyal fan bases aren't necessarily always the same things, but sometimes they are. Vanderbilt, their fans have been through a lot, and they got a little bit of a payoff this last year on the football side of things, sticking around, being through that, going through the Alabama game at home and all those things. So we're throwing the question out there today, which fans in this state are the most loyal? It's an interesting question, Joe Rexrode. A lot of crossover between some of these fan bases as well.
Yeah, like my first instinct is to just jump to Vanderbilt just because in particular, and actually, I mean, basketball had a bad run recently too, and I think better days are ahead there. But just the football, I think you go through losing like that, and in just a situation where, for the most part, it just looks so hard to win, and you're a small fan base, and it's that this is how it goes. I mean, fan bases are built on winning. I mean, look, I still believe we've talked about this. I think the Preds and that run 8 years ago gained fans for them, added fans that are probably still fans because of that. I mean, I've heard that from people who are that. But Vanderbilt just doesn't have that, I mean,
right.
They have the occasional, they had the little couple of years there with Franklin and, here and there. But I just feel like that the serious loyalty for the people who go out there and sit through it. And again, last year they got rewarded with such an exciting year, and now they actually have this exciting preseason. But then again, I mean, Tennessee fans, I mean, my goodness, yes, they were spoiled at a certain point, right? From the basically from the mid '90s for about a good decade there. I'd say probably a top 5 program in college football. I think that's easy. I think that's a safe assessment. And you have a national championship, and then the long period of just bungle after bungle after that. And so I don't know, it's an interesting, there's no question it's a much bigger fan base. How do you judge those two loyalties against each other?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's very different. Like, Tennessee fans, the part about them that's really interesting to me is, like, if you give Tennessee fans the slightest window of hope, they show up in droves, right? Like the minute that baseball started to be good and like compete for, you felt like you had a chance to win in the SEC and the national championship. I mean, the fan base exploded, right? Like the minute that it looked like Josh Heupel knew what he was doing and that there was, a coach in there that has somewhat of a clue. Like there's a long list to get in for like Tennessee season tickets. Like at one point, I haven't looked lately. At one point, it was like 10,000 deep to get in on Tennessee season tickets. So, like Tennessee has always been a fan base, especially recently, that I think has been starved to the point where, like, if you give them a reason to think that you might actually be good, like they are all in at that point. But is that loyal? Like, is that loyal? I think it's passionate. But the loyal part of it is, like, there are obviously a ton of loyal Tennessee fans. Like, I just feel like when you first asked this question, the first thing that came to mind to me was like the Vanderbilt football fan who has been through thick and thin with this team, that's seen a lot of crap out there, and that they were in the stands, they were there for like Vanderbilt's win against Alabama last year. And just like how rewarding that feeling must have been based on everything else that they had kind of seen and went through as a fan. Like that's the first image that came to my mind when you threw this question out there. Like that Vandy football fan that's been going to games for 35 years, that's seen their team get kicked up and down the field countless times, and it got paid off with that Alabama win last year.
Yeah. Jimmy Wyatt, he had an incredible streak. I forget what the number was, where he did not miss a Vanderbilt Tennessee game. I mean, he went to and graduated from Tennessee, and yet wearing that Vanderbilt hat. And there's a guy and his family, they have their tickets forever. Like there's someone who, that's who gets rewarded. Like that is just true loyalty through, your school, through all those years, covering the NFL and still finding a way to like fly like a red eye from California after covering or you're going out there after the Vanderbilt Tennessee game, but I mean, we can find people Tennessee fan base too, and of course more, because there's just more of everything in that fan base. Real quick, texters rightfully pointing out this study. Another issue here is just how many of those tickets are bought by visiting fans. As we know, that's a big deal here. And I'd say that was probably, I mean, it's been a while, right, that this has been a strong tourist destination, but that's probably when it started really getting intense, don't you think?
Yeah, I would
About a
agree.
decade ago, decade plus ago in that range. So there's another thing to keep in mind. It's flawed.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Joe throwing the question out there. Which fans in this state are the most loyal? We'll continue to take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Scranton Wilkes-Barre at First Horizon Park. Pregame at 6:20, first pitch at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Throwing it out there. Which fans in this state are the most loyal? We have a lot of different opinions on this so far. 615-737-1025. Let's head to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, Robby, man. You'd say I'm pretty loyal, right?
Of course.
Especially to this station. Like, I am loyal to this team. There's days I go by where I feel like I'm the only Titans fan in the state. Like, I don't know a whole lot of other Titans fans in my personal circle, which is incredible. I think that's a horrible statistic. Like, there's no way we're the most if I look at it like, I think about when the Vols hired Shiano and how much we tripped over that. And, like, yeah, it was a really dark time for the program, but And I didn't agree with them treating that dude like that, but it just goes to show they were like, we're not having that. So I think it's got to be Tennessee football. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I've talked to a lot of people who love sports pretty constantly, and I'm one of just a few Titans fans that I know. So I think it's a horrible stat. I don't think it's right.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. I don't think there's any question, Joe, like in terms of looking around the state, if you're trying to identify – like the largest number of most rabid, passionate fans, it's Tennessee football by a mile. Like, I don't think it's really close when it comes to that. You know, we had somebody text in that says, you know, I talked about Tennessee, like if you give them a little bit of hope, then they just show up in droves. And somebody says, well, if it takes hope to show up, then it's not loyal. It's what have you done for me lately? Vol fandom is transactional. I could see you saying that, like, but I've also, like, I've been in Neyland Stadium when they're not any good and it's pouring down raining and they're playing, you know, I don't know, LSU or whatever it is. They're down by 25 and you look around and there's still 100,000 people in there. Like, they have the largest fan base by far, and Tennessee fans are incredibly passionate. You know, Vanderbilt. Somebody on YouTube, Brandon on YouTube, says it wasn't that long ago that Vanderbilt's attendance was a Twitter trope, like tens of fans in the stands. You know, Vanderbilt certainly does not have the same fan base that Tennessee has. But when you ask this question, I just thought of like those Vanderbilt fans that are there and that are there all the time and that did go through all that stuff and then get paid off with the Alabama game last year. No one's going to argue that Vanderbilt fans there are more Vanderbilt fans that are loyal than Tennessee fans. I just thought of those people immediately when it comes to like people who have actually been through a lot of crap, who stuck around and got somewhat of a payoff on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a smaller fan base. So I mean, like it's like you're just judging the percentage of it that's loyal, right? Which is, I mean, obviously we'll never come up with a full answer, but it's an interesting discussion. You know, Vanderbilt fans, I would definitely argue in favor of their loyalty, hanging in there with that program. I actually remember, I want to say it was 2019. I wrote about this at the Athletic because it was the first time I had ever seen the lower seats on the home side, which is typically like there's that's a lot of families, but also like donors. Like that's where you always know. You know, the other side is where obviously a lot of visiting teams often have taken over, but like on that side, there was Georgia red pretty significantly. And I'm like, I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
You know, and at that point, it had been, you know, they're starting to go the wrong way, you know, under Derek Mason, and, you know, he was fired after the next season or late in the next season. But yeah, it's pretty good loyalty. You know, we also with college sports, we have other sports too. So think about Tennessee. Now again, football drives everything, but like Tennessee, like men's basketball fans, they pack that place now, and it's a huge arena. I mean, to me, it's just way too big for a college hoops arena, but they pack it now. Look at baseball and what they do. I understand how a lot of people say, well, that's just bandwagoning from winning, you know, but what was it like when it wasn't good? Vanderbilt. So Jake, you do a great job calling Vanderbilt women's basketball, which is a surging program. I think they're going to be a top 10 to top 15 team going into next year. What have you seen on, like, in your time as far as like that fandom?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's growing, and you get big wins like Vandy did against Tennessee last year, beat them twice for the first time ever, I believe was the stat, that they had never beaten Tennessee twice in the same season before. So you kind of hope with that. And, Michaela Blake's coming back, Camille Pierre coming back, that building is going to be a lot more full for those games this upcoming season.
Yeah. I mean, it's the college sports part of it is interesting because, as somebody's pointing out, the Vols have multiple championships in multiple sports. So you think it has to be between the Titans, the Preds, and Vandy. It says Vandy does have baseball championships, but they still would trade that for football championships. I mean, you've got so many different options in college. Like, I mean, I would say this, like, if you're a pro sports fan around here and the Titans have had periods of success, right? Like, they've not had a Super Bowl, but they've been to one Super Bowl. They've had different runs where they've been good teams, playoff teams. Predators have been largely a playoff team since they got here, right? Like, after they got through that opening kind of expansion team funk of the first 5 years, they've been a playoff team basically ever since then, with the exception of like 4 years, right? So, like, there have been different types of success. They just they've not seen championships, right? Like, there's been no championship with the Titans and the Preds. So, like, it's not like you threw out the Browns or the Jets, right? Like, the Jets have a Super Bowl, 50 years ago. But like the Jets haven't
Almost
been
60.
When's the last time the Jets made the playoffs? It was like, is it 10? 2010? Is that the
Mark
last time?
Sanchez?
Yeah, like it's you know, the the Titans are not that. Like, they've not been through that long of futility. I mean, even think about the Lions, Joe. I know the Lions the last couple of years have had an unbelievable run of success, and they've been a really, really good team. Think about the Lions before, like, the last 2 years. What's that been like? Right? Like, it's been just an absolute, tire fire out there.
No, I mean, look, in all seriousness, I would put up Lions fans in any discussion of fan loyalty. They are sick people. I mean, I've tried to help some of them, but they are sick people. Like, they think, and I mean, good for them for finally being rewarded to a point, although they're never going to get a championship. So it's still going to be like this empty feeling, but it's incredible. Like, it's incredible how, like, that to me that's how you judge loyalty. It's, are you still there? Do you still have hope? Do you still show up when it's bad? And so they've been bad so much that it's an incredible fan base. And again, this is where, like, with Tennessee, I understand some people saying, yeah, obviously, like, you can look at, like I just pointed out, baseball, men's basketball, they flock to those. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think hanging in on football through all this stuff and still believing this one will work, this will do it. I mean, what else is loyalty than that?
Yeah. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on our phone and text lines about the most loyal fan base in the state. Plus, a situation continuing to brew in the NFL that I am very interested to see if there is a resolution at some point. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Joe, the Trey Hendrickson situation in Cincinnati continuing to be very interesting. Trey Hendrickson is 30 years old. He's led the NFL in sacks the last 2 years and does not yet have a contract extension with the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals this offseason have paid Jamar Chase. They've paid T. Higgins. No deal as of yet with Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson showed up last week to the OTAs, but did not practice and was on the sideline basically holding court with the media for like 25 minutes about his contract situation. So that was interesting in Cincinnati.
I like it.
This is how it's these fast when these type of discussions come up, it's always interesting. So all I did, Joe, I just Googled Trey Hendrickson. Let me just tell you about 4 things that come up. Bengals Trey Hendrickson getting listed as a trade name for the Packers. This from Yahoo Sports. Got another website that says NFL experts won't shut up about Trey Hendrickson and the Commanders. Another website is Trey Hendrickson in play for the Bears. An insider has an update. And in the NBC Sports, Trey Hendrickson, if he doesn't blink, is on track to be Hassan Reddick 2.0. So a lot of different takes on the Trey Hendrickson situation in Cincinnati. Now, reportedly, Joe, he has been offered $28 million per year. Now, as you know, Myles Garrett signed an extension earlier this offseason where he's getting paid $40 million a year. So that's quite a gap between the $40 million and $28 million. Now, frankly, I know Trey Hendrickson has led the NFL in sacks. I think Myles Garrett is a better player than Trey Hendrickson, but that is quite a large gap. What do you make of the contract gap between Hendrickson and the Bengals? Do you see a situation this gets resolved? And do you think Hendrickson will actually sit out the season if he's not paid what he wants, which is what he said that he will do moving forward?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've always sort of looked at this like, yeah, okay, it'll happen. Like we had Adam Kaplan on, and he was like, yeah, this is all posturing, it'll get done. But he's convincing me when he talks, and the fact that he's out there like, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and get this out to everybody who wants to write about it and talk about it. Let's get with the media and use that as a weapon. Man, good for him. I mean, use what's at your disposal. But I agree with you. Myles Garrett is a better player than him. Is Myles Garrett a 33% better player than him? Which, if my math is correct, that's roughly the AAV difference there.
That's a good question.
I don't think so. So I don't blame him at all. I mean, like if I'm him, and I understand. Look, it comes down to give me the guaranteed money is really what matters in these contracts. But still, these guys look at what this guy makes per year, what I make per year. How do we compare? And if I'm Trey Hendrickson, I'm pretty close to Myles Garrett. Like in my production, the last 2 years is what it is. So I need to be closer than that. Definitely closer than that. I'm still going to predict that they figure this out, but this is notoriously the cheapest franchise in sports, a franchise that frankly got bailed out by Joe Burrow. I mean, a franchise that makes it like they don't pay extra scouts. They make their coaches be their scouts.
Yeah.
A franchise that's the only one owned by a non-billionaire in the NFL. So we've seen a lot lately of they've actually picked good players recently. And so now they have this issue of, you need to now pay them like fairly and match up with the rest of the league. And by the way, you're not one of the drivers of the NFL economics. You really aren't, but you get to share in all this money. So you have to keep that in mind too.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if there is a resolution here, or if they're just hardline that they're not gonna budge on what the contract is. I mean, the complicated factor here is he is 30, right? So, I mean, it's not a great time for his contract to be coming up. He's got 1 year left, and he's 30 years old. So, how much are you going to commit to Hendrickson beyond this? The Bengals. I've been guilty of this. We kind of include them over the past couple of years in the conversation with Baltimore and Kansas City and Buffalo because of their quarterback, right? Like Joe Burrow is so good that we include the Bengals in that conversation. I mean, the last 2 years, they've missed the playoffs. Now, albeit Burrow was hurt the first time, but last year, like their defense was awful, which led to the firing of the defensive coordinator. And by the way, their defense was awful with Trey Hendrickson being as productive as it was. So, like, if I guess you could view that a couple different ways. One, you could say, well, Trey Hendrickson, as good as he was, didn't really help us win all that much. I kind of view it this way, Joe, of, well, I'm glad you paid your offensive players, and Joe Burrow was awesome last year, and his numbers were unbelievable. But if your defense was that bad with Trey Hendrickson, is it going to be worse without him next year? How much? Do you think you're getting back in the playoff picture and being a legitimate threat to win the AFC next year if you don't have Trey Hendrickson rushing the passer? It's hard for me to get there with that team.
Yeah, and look, I don't think Lou Anarumo forgot how to coach either. So it's just they have massive issues. They've tried to address some of them. We'll see how they did this offseason. But yeah, how are you? As much as it's great to keep those pass catchers with Joe Burrow, I mean, I would prioritize that. I would prioritize that over Trey Henderson because that's directly affecting the happiness of my great quarterback. So I have to do that. But again, man, like last year, the dude has an MVP level statistical season and doesn't sniff the playoffs.
Right.
So you might want to give him a little bit of defense. So I don't see how losing him achieves that for you. Like you're absolutely as bad as they were. Well, especially early. I mean, they did make a little run late, but you are in your window. You're in your window right now for sure. So this is why you keep a guy like that. Whereas, I know Titans fans, we've had the discussion about just like I'm sure every fan base in the NFL, like, oh, what about Trey Hendrickson? I mean, this is a place where to me it doesn't make any sense at all.
No, not at this time. Like, if the Titans are still in a window of contention, then maybe you do put together some sort of package. But I think Trey Hendrickson at 30 years old, to me, if it's not in Cincinnati, there's going to be a team that is a contender and feels like they're a pass rusher away that puts together a rusher there. I mean, let's say that this ends up not working out and Cincinnati, like it just gets to a point where it's so toxic and they have to move on and they just decide to trade Trey Hendrickson. Like if I'm Joe Burrow, and this is just me, maybe he views it differently. But I said this to start all this, and I stand by it now. I would, if I'm the Bengals, I would rather the Bengals have paid Jamar Chase and paid Trey Hendrickson and let T. Higgins walk than just going with, paying the two receivers. Like you don't really see teams pay the two receivers that often. Like I know A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are getting paid in Philadelphia, but it doesn't really happen that much where you're paying both receivers. I would have probably just gone with, all right, I'll pay Trey Hendrickson, I'll pay Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. We can go find another receiver. We'll draft one.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that might have been the way to go. It seems like I think Burrow doesn't seem to think that T. Higgins is just some dude who's riding the coattails of Jamar Chase.
Agreed.
So at least he's happy. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely have made the case to do that. I mean, I still think they're ultimate. You have to figure this out if you're the Bengals. And I don't know if he's really going to go through with it, but if you're the Bengals, you have to figure this out. Like you just can't. There's no excuse, for letting a great player just walk on a side of the ball that's so lacking in great players. When you have Joe Burrow and you actually have a chance, I think a lot of people with him are going to pick them certainly to be a playoff team this year. I mean, I think they'll be a playoff team this year. But if you take him out of the equation, I mean, how are they not one of the worst defenses in the NFL?
I mean, they drafted Shamar Stewart, who, as we know, had 4.5 sacks in 3 years. So maybe that'll change their fortune at the NFL level.
I mean, and he may, he definitely could be good, but good enough to compensate as a rookie. Yeah, that's asking a lot.
615-737-1025, our phone number. There was an interesting trade idea that was thrown out there yesterday by Elliot Friedman as it relates to the Predators. That got me thinking a little bit. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Jake Lyman here with you on this Tuesday morning, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ben Arthur from Fox Sports will join us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Titans and all things AFC South with him, so looking forward to that. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up later this hour at 7:45. So, Joe, as you know, your beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, who are your pick to win the Stanley Cup, bowed out in Game 7 against the Florida Panthers. They got smoked at home. And frankly, anytime Toronto loses in the playoffs, the day after is always a pretty entertaining day. Like I think about, one of the most entertaining experiences of my sporting life was like when Kentucky won the basketball championship back in 2012. There was an app where you could turn on like the Lexington police scanner, and just some of the stuff going on out there was just amazing. So I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning listening to the Lexington police scanner. It's pretty similar like when Toronto gets eliminated from the playoffs. It's not a police scanner, but just the absolute avalanche of reaction when those guys get put out of the playoffs is pretty amazing. So yesterday after our show, I looked around and found Elliot Friedman in a new edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast that he does, kind of breaking down the Toronto Maple Leafs and the disappointment again of losing early in the playoffs and not getting past the Florida Panthers in the second round. And there's a lot coming for Toronto. Like Marner's a free agent, Tavares is a free agent, and their team is probably going to look pretty different next year as they prepare for this. So I'm listening to this and kind of listening to Friedman go through the wreckage here with Toronto. And then all of a sudden he comes up with a trade idea that is not being reported. Friedman just threw this out there as something he was wondering about that involves the Nashville Predators. And I thought to myself, here's what Elliot Friedman had to say yesterday on the 32 Thoughts podcast.
Can I throw another name out there outside of Marchand?
I would never say no to you.
Okay. Well, you better not, or else you're out of here. Okay. I want to say I'm throwing this purely at the wall. Okay. I'm doing this with no knowledge. I don't even know that the player would want to do this.
Okay.
Jonathan Marchessault.
That's the sound of you throwing that name on the wall.
So again, it's just me throwing stuff. I freely admit it's purely out of the top of my head. Tough year in Nashville. They need to make some changes. He's 34 years old, 4 more years, fierce competitor. I don't know.
That was Friedman yesterday on the 32 Thoughts podcast. So they talked earlier, Brad Marchand after Florida won, basically spent time just talking about like how tough it is to play in Toronto and like the Leafs fans and how much pressure they put on Toronto. And, Friedman talked early about, Marchand's a free agent coming up, and wouldn't that be something if he ends up in Toronto at the end of all that? And then they started talking about Marchessault. Obviously, as we know, tough year here in Nashville. I'm interested to see what moves Barry Trotz has this offseason up his sleeve via trade. He has talked about the hockey trade and how that could be something that the Predators try to weaponize this offseason. So, Joe, again, this is not Friedman reporting anything. It's just him throwing something out there of something he's curious about. What do you make of that, of the idea of could you see if the Toronto Maple Leafs would be interested in Jonathan Marchessault, Joe Rexrode?
Well, the obvious next question is, okay, for what? And what is and for anything that helps the Preds now, because gonna reject anybody, including absolute water carrier Stilly, who suggests that the Preds are doing anything right now but trying to win right now and desperately needing to win right now. So what are you getting back? I have wondered, Robby, about whether the decision to retain Andrew Brunette means that ideally, if there were to be a veteran traded, Marchessault would be the best choice just because of some of the, apparent conflict or at least, whatever philosophical disagreement, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Marchessault's made it very clear. Maybe not. Maybe the fire, as you said, maybe the fire and his willingness to speak out and things like that is exactly what they need more of here. So why get rid of it? But also, he didn't exactly. I mean, look, no one had a great year. So it's an interesting, it's an interesting idea, and I have to think that's part of Friedman's thinking too, right?
Yes.
Is just that maybe it's better for everybody if he's gone. It's really interesting. Like, how do the other guys in the room view Marchessault? Obviously, he had some issues with system, coach, all that stuff. But how do his teammates view him? How does he view his teammates?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I keep coming back to the contract. Like, he's 34. He's got 4 years left. And while it's not an astronomical number that he's getting paid, I mean, you are talking about $5.5 million per season at age 34. Now, obviously he didn't have a great year this past year. If he rebounds and scores, 35 goals next year, then the $5.5 million, nobody's going to really care about, especially with the cap going up. But he is 34. And look, Vegas didn't want to go there, right? Like, Vegas did not want to give him 5 years. They did not want to pay him the amount that he got here in Nashville. And we talked about that the day after last year, right? Like, somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong when it comes to the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Nashville Predators. And the early returns look like the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights were right and the Predators were wrong. That's what the early returns look like. Maybe that's not how it plays out next year. We'll see. I just think that if I was a team out there and I was attempting to get Jonathan Marchessault, I'm probably not giving up a whole lot. Like, he's 34. He'll be 35 in December. You're paying him over $5 million a year, and he's coming off a down year. So maybe it is just as simple as things didn't work here in Nashville and he goes somewhere else and he's back to being a 40-goal scorer. I mean, I kind of doubt it. We talked about it at the time. He's been a 40-goal scorer one time in his career, and other than that, he's never really approached it. So he doesn't have to be a 40-goal scorer here in Nashville for him to be effective, but he does need to creep more towards 30, like more towards 30 and more kind of towards that, 65-ish point range would be nice if you're Jonathan Marchessault. So is he going to do that again at age 35? I don't know. I would be pretty surprised, though, Joe, like if the Predators traded him, if they got back really anything overly significant that would help them next year, which puts you in a very big problem spot if you're a Barry Trotz.
Yeah. So how does it help you next year? Next year, yeah, of course, you could look at this and you may help yourself down the line. Which, again, people who want to carry water say, hey, a few years down the line, we'll see how some of these prospects work out. That's what matters. To me, in reality, in the real world, you have to win next year. You cannot miss the playoffs next year. You have to get to the playoffs next year, and you have to do more than that, in my opinion. But I'll read Nate on the text line driven by WilsonCunningham.com says, why should the Preds trade him if they want to win now? Which obviously have to plan is based on Trotz's comments. He seems to be the only, if not the only one, challenging Burnett. The way the team plays, Trotz says the Preds need more meanness. If Marchessault's move, it sounds like the Preds would have the Care Bears of a team. I like that, the Nashville Care Bears. But yeah, does it help them? Does the chemistry, the culture get better if he's out, or does it get weaker if he's gone? And that's exactly what you don't need.
Well, I told you guys at the end of the year that he has definitely rubbed some people the wrong way in that organization. And I mean, I think it's pretty clear that that's kind of how it played out at the end there. I think you bring up the big question, which is really the one that matters, is like, what do his teammates think, right? I will say, like, I brought it up when Steven Stamkos had the comments and Barry Trotz had the comments. I asked both of them about Marchessault, and the first thing they started talking about was how easy it is to complain sometimes, right? Like Stamkos said,
Stamkos comments, yeah,
like I asked him about Marchessault and playing a different way and all that stuff, and the first thing he started talking about was like, hey, when things aren't going right, it's easy to say everything sucks. So maybe that wasn't taking a shot at Marchessault. Maybe that was just his way of getting to a long answer to the question. But I took note of that. I asked Barry Trotz about Marchessault's comments, and the first thing he started talking about was, well, it's easy to say the system doesn't work when it's not working for you, right? So I don't know. I took note of those two things. Maybe it's a nothing burger that I'm making too much of, but I don't think so. Like, I think there's something there. I think whether it's Toronto or not, it does bring up the larger conversation, Joe, of will the Predators attempt to move him this offseason? And if so, is he receptive to it? Now, if memory serves me correctly, and I think Adams talked about this too, I do think there's like a limited no trade clause that he's got. I think it may be 16 teams. If memory serves me correctly, I have to do some double checking on that. But like if the Predators approached Marchessault this offseason and said, hey man, we got a deal in place to go to so and so, whether it's Toronto or elsewhere. Like, how open to that would Marchessault be after 1 year? I don't know. I think that's that. Rather than the specific destination of Toronto for the Predators' purposes, Joe, I think that's the larger philosophical question: is would Barry Trotz actually try to do that and move on from Marchessault after 1 year?
Yeah, and it is interesting to think what he would think. I mean, look, if you're him, miserable year, losing year, you weren't happy with the way your team was playing hockey. I can see Toronto, as much as, like, obviously there's tough things about being a player there. I can still see that being attractive, but they should still be a at least competitive team next year.
You would think. 615-737-1025, our phone number. What do you make of the idea that Friedman threw out there yesterday of potentially Toronto targeting Jonathan Marchessault? And if you're the Predators, would you be willing to move on from Marchessault after 1 year? We'll take your thoughts on all that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away to see Penn and Teller at the Ryman Auditorium coming up on Wednesday, June the 11th. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a pair of tickets to Penn and Teller at the Ryman Auditorium coming up on Wednesday, June the 11th. Throwing the question out there, would the Predators be open to moving Jonathan Marchessault this offseason after just 1 year with the Predators? Elliot Friedman throwing it out there yesterday. Again, not reporting anything, but just throwing the idea out there of, things aren't going well in Toronto. Mitch Marner probably leaving in free agency. We'll see what happens with John Tavares. Would the Maple Leafs be interested in bringing in a guy like Jonathan Marchessault? Now, one thing that's interesting about like Toronto and why like Marchessault could be an interesting fit there, Joe, is I think they need a little more of that sandpaper, like a little more of that fiery competitiveness. And I'm not sure they've always had the right mix of that in Toronto. So I think Marchessault could be an interesting fit from that standpoint. As people have brought up on the text line, don't we think the Predators need a little bit more of that? Like, could you make the argument that Marchessault is actually needed here, and maybe you need a few more guys like him if you're the Nashville Predators? And it's an interesting point. One thing that Barry Trotz, Joe, did talk about at his very long end of season press conference was how maybe sometimes they're too nice. Like the Predators are too nice in their room. And Marchessault, I don't think, is a guy that is afraid to speak his mind. So, again, beyond the actual destination of Toronto, I'm less concerned about that and more from the Predators' perspective of the general idea of how open would they actually be to moving on for Marchessault after 1 year. And if they're open to it, how realistic is it that they can actually find a deal to get that to happen this offseason?
Yeah, and again, are we sure that Marchessault is behind the scenes driving accountability as opposed to just complaining publicly?
Right.
There's a huge difference. Also, I understand the idea, hey, got to have more guys willing to speak their mind, more guys who aren't just gonna accept mediocrity, but you also have to be good yourself and productive still.
Right.
So what is he in that way? But I could see with all the public clues we have, how there could be some sentiment of, maybe there's just more harmony and just more people, frankly, just willing to just suck it up, try new things, figure out solutions if you move him.
Well, and also philosophically, we all know that they need probably a couple centermen, but definitely one this offseason, right? Like we all know that. So I don't know that trading Jonathan Marchessault is going to help you do that straight up from the trade. But like if you freed up even more money moving forward, would that open up something? And here's the other thing: like there was so much talk this year, and they talked about this in the room. It was a big discussion point around the league. I remember Ray Ferraro talked about this before the season started, and brought up like, now I don't know if this is going to work in Nashville because they got three guys on the wing that are right-handed shots, right? Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault. And at times, like they played them all together, moving Stamkos to center, but you don't really see that happen very often where you got three right-handed guys all playing together at the same time. So, like from a tactical standpoint, do the Predators look at this and say, yeah, we almost feel like we got too much of the same thing when it comes to like the scoring right wing or the right-handed shot, and do you try to move him out and maybe be a little bit more aggressive in free agency than you thought, if you're freeing up a little bit more money with him gone? I don't know. I'm just spitballing there, but like tactically, do the Predators beyond, there's a lot of things that went wrong last year. I'm sure system was probably part of it. I'm sure that there's a lot of things that you could point to, but how much is that an issue with them of they want to change up kind of the way that they attack and not have those three right-handed shots out there all together at the same time?
Yeah, that makes sense. Cam says, I think they should want to move him, but if we make that move, there has to be a plan in place for the near future. The biggest issue is we don't have a plan. We keep spinning our wheels, wanting to contend when results show we aren't close to being good enough yet. Well, I mean, if you go by last year's results, they're not in any sort of window, but if you go by their payroll,
right,
they have to be.
Yeah, I mean, the likelihood is Marchessault is probably going to be back. I still could come back to the contract and say, all right, how many teams are signing up for 4 more years with Marchessault at age 34 at $5.5 million per year? I don't know. I mean, there could be somebody out there. All right. I mean, the cap's going up. The NHL's in a pretty good spot financially. So maybe people look at the money and they say, you know what, for what we think he could bring to our team, we're willing to pay the money even at his age. I kind of doubt that's going to happen. So if he is back, how do you make it work? Like that's really the fundamental question of the offseason of we all know they need a centerman. So we can say, well, just bring in a centerman and that works. That's also really hard to do. So can you do that? Can you bring in a good enough centerman this offseason via trade, free agency, whatever it is, if you're the Predators, that changes the way your team plays? Because that's part of what we talked about with keeping Andrew Brunette. Like they got to change the way they play to some degree. And I think that's what Marchessault was saying at the end of the year of like, clearly this didn't work, right? So
He's not wrong.
You got to figure out something different. And Brunette talked about that at the end of the year. Like he's going to have to make some adjustments. And what exactly are their adjustments going to be? I don't know. That's going to be really interesting to see, like the way that they play. How much different is that next year? And can you really play all that much differently if you're bringing everybody back? That's going to be the question.
Right. I mean, if you're Brunette, you have to have an open mind on one of these guys, and he would, I think, be the most likely, right? Maybe the only one who's remotely possible being gone. And like you said, is there someone coming in who actually can drive that change? Like if you're Brunette, you have to. I mean, I know when we talked to him, he was talking about how he's going to, spend as much time as he needs to try to figure out the starts of seasons and all these things. But he also still doesn't know for sure what he has. I mean, I think you're probably right. And it's the same core group back in part because it's just hard to move any, even Marchessault, but maybe not. And then maybe that helps Brunette, do some different things. Maybe Marchessault is really just saying, I need to be out of here, and it could work.
Well, hey, look, I have no inside information on this. This is just me spitballing too. But I don't know how the conversations went with Marchessault and Barry Trotz. Like Barry Trotz, I brought up the conversations that or the public comments that Marchessault made. And in Barry Trotz's answer there, part of what he said was like, yeah, I'm aware of what Marchessault said, and we'll keep those conversations between me and him, which tells me that there were obviously way more detailed conversations about exactly what Marchessault thinks moving forward. But I don't know, the Predators could have walked away from these exit meetings, Joe, and said, all right, well, we're bringing Andrew Brunette back, and we think Marchessault's a problem, and we're getting rid of him this offseason. I mean, that very well could be in their cards right here. I have no idea how they're viewing that.
Well, sure hope for their sake that message is not out to the league, because then you have no leverage.
Exactly.
But maybe, yeah, that absolutely could be. Matt says, I'd want the Preds to take a swing at getting one of the Toronto centers. Marchessault could be a good stabilizer for Toronto as they move into a different era, but the particulars of the trade would be key. I don't
know who that would be. I mean, they're not trading Matthews.
You're not getting Austin Matthews back.
You're not getting him back from Marchessault anyway. And Marner is not a center. He's a free agent. Tavares is going to be a free agent. So, I mean, other than that, I don't really know who you want at center from Toronto. We all know they need a center. We all know it. I look at it right now, and I think it's going to be a difficult thing to do because how many teams are trading away useful, good centermen? It just doesn't happen very often in the NHL. So trying to find a way to do that, I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think Marchessault factors into that discussion, right? If you're moving Marchessault, you're not getting back some legitimate bona fide top 6 center for him, unless some team's just an idiot out there.
No. George says, can't believe the Preds didn't fire an assistant. This is on the YouTube chat. Fire an assistant coach or somebody, just running it back like nothing bad happened.
Well, I wouldn't exactly say that yet. I wouldn't say that it's a guarantee that the entire coaching staff is going to come back as is. Trotz was asked about that at the end of season press conference, and he said, I don't anticipate a change at the moment, but he also said that there are a lot of really good coaches that are out there and available, and that he could bring somebody else in that's a new voice. So I wouldn't automatically assume that the coaching staff is going to be exactly the same heading into next year.
It is funny. We kind of we as a general fans, I mean, it is kind of both sides of the mouth a little bit with the Titans and Preds, right? It's like we flip out about Amy firing everybody all the time. But, the Trotz wants stability, which in general, philosophically, I don't disagree with him. It's like, if you have people that you believe that they can do the job, then give them a chance. You got that chance, worked out pretty well for you. But yeah, to your point, I wouldn't just assume that at this point.
Caleb says trade him and all the picks for Tage Thompson. Andrew says Yossi or Forsberg for Matthews. And now we've entered fantasy land on the text.
Boy, here we go. Fantasy hockey.
615-737-1025, our phone number. A couple more of your thoughts to get to on the Predators. We'll do that next. Plus, a question that I am throwing out there well in advance of football season, and I think we all need to keep in mind as the NFL season comes around. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up here in just a few minutes at 7:45. A couple more of your thoughts to get to on the Predators front as it relates to potential trades this offseason. Craig says, could we package a March or so with one of our first-round picks to teams with a great center, or would you have to give more, which is what I'm thinking you may have to do? I believe it would probably take more. I mean, some of this depends on who we're talking about. Like
what's a great center?
What level of center are we talking? Are we talking, Taze Thompson? Are we talking Elias Pettersson? Like, what are we talking about here? So some of it depends on who you're talking to. But, yeah, in general, it would take more than Jonathan Marchessault and one of your first-round picks here. The first-round picks are going to be interesting, Joe. Like, obviously, they're going to use their first one, right? Like, they're going to use number 5 overall, and they're going to pick a player. Beyond that, is there a deal out there that makes sense that you could package one or both of these other first-round picks that to add to your team right now? And, Joe, I'm wondering, everybody's going to assume that could be a center. I wonder if that comes via defenseman, right? Like there's clearly like a right-handed shot defenseman that they need with this group. And I know people are going to say, well, that's great. You had Alex Carrier and Dante Fabro. And believe me, I know. But, I mean, I think you're going to see the Predators bring a right-handed shot defenseman in at some point this offseason. So is there a player out there that you could target that is worthy of one of those first-round picks that could help you package it that way? Does somebody get desperate? Like, look, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but I do think like every now and then this does happen in the league, right? A few years ago, Joe, it got to the offseason, and we were talking about Matthew Tkachuk because Matthew Tkachuk made it clear that he wasn't going to re-sign in Calgary and that he wanted out and that there were certain teams that he wanted to be traded to. Obviously, Florida was at the top of his list, and that's ultimately where he ended up going. But think about how that move has changed their franchise. Like the Panthers traded for Matthew Tkachuk, and all they've done since then is go to a Stanley Cup final, win a Stanley Cup, and now they're in the Eastern Conference final again. They may go on to win another cup. Like that's what they've done since they went and traded for him. I'm not saying that is out there, like a move like that is out there this offseason. But, Joe, that basically came out of nowhere. Like it came like pretty quickly that developed, and all of a sudden it changed. So if you're the Predators, is there anything like that? Maybe not to the degree of Matthew Tkachuk, but is there a player out there that looks at their situation this offseason and says, hey, you know what? I don't know if I want to be here anymore. And could the Predators be in position to take advantage of that with the assets that they do have?
Great question. That's the type of thing you need to materialize. Also, not to make anybody feel bad, but in case you forgot, Tkachuk had some interest in Nashville, and there was some talk. And we had a couple days on this program where we were like, oh, my goodness. And just imagine how different things might be had that worked out.
Yep, sure did. I remember we had Jeremy Rutherford on who covers the Blues for The Athletic, who was deeply tied in with the Tkachuks. And he's like, oh, yeah, Nashville. Like, he would be interested in Nashville. And I was like, really? Okay. All right. That's good. Didn't work out that way, though. I mean, I can't blame him for wanting to go to Florida. It's worked out pretty well.
It has worked out well, but yes, that's, man, when you have those opportunities, and previously the Preds obviously made some moves 10 years ago ish, that got them to a cup final, got them within a couple wins of a Stanley Cup, including the Johansson trade. But I got a Red Wings fan, fellow Red Wings fan, saying you can have Larkin for Yossi. Two captains not getting it done, get a new city.
I mean, I think the Predators would take Dylan Larkin. It's just me. Now, I don't think they're trading Roman Yossi to get it. But, I mean, that does bring up an interesting kind of point, and it goes back to defense here. Like, everybody focuses in on center, and I'm with you. They need a center. Their defense is a huge question to me right now because I think, their defense wasn't good last year anyway, and that was – Yossi being healthy for the majority of it. Yossi's 35. I know that he has been a great player for a long time, but you got another concussion that you can now add to the list. I say Yossi's 35. Yossi's going to be 35 in 2 weeks. So Yossi will be 35 when next season begins. I think you have to entertain the possibility, if you're the Predators, that he may not be the elite defenseman anymore. Like, he's still probably pretty good, and I think there's a chance that he could bounce back just like I think some other guys can bounce back next year. But like, I do think, I mean, we're getting to the point with Yossi in his career, Joe, where at 35, he's probably not the elite guy that he once was. So how does that influence the way that you structure your defense? Like that, I still look at their defense right now and think that it needs a little bit of an overhaul with what they've got.
They got a lot of issues, and whenever
Yeah.
we talk, whenever we talk through the Preds, that's kind of where it comes back to. Like, man, it just because time is just marching on here. You just had a complete lost year for
Yeah.
all these guys who are not getting younger, obviously, and are getting into that range where it's like you just have to naturally expect some diminishment of their skills, their production, and man, like they need. Beyond whatever moves they make this year, next year is going to require at least probably 3. Oh, wow. Look at that comeback / breakthrough season from this guy that I didn't see coming for it to even be, to me, like remotely possible that they, live up to any sort of expectations.
Right. Like with the way their defense is right now, like I do think like people got all over Brady Shea this year, and he was bad for the first half of the year. I do think he got better as the year went on. And like I would expect Brady Shea with a year into the system to be good next year. Like I think I saw enough from him at the end of the season where it was like, all right, it looks like he's starting to figure it out a little bit. So I would expect him to be good next year. But like I think their defense right now is in need of like an elite player, and they need Roman Yossi to be Roman Yossi, who won the Norris Trophy a few years ago. And I just don't know that he's that anymore. That doesn't mean he can't be a good player, and he's not still a good player, but he's 35, right? Like, I mean, he's been playing for a long time. He's 35 years old. Like, I don't know that you're going to be seeing Roman Yossi at this stage of his career in the Norris Trophy conversation anymore, which is, again, it's natural. Like you have to expect that as these players age, right? So then that leaves you, well, where exactly are you with your defense?
Yeah, like it's no knock on him at all. He's been incredible. He's had a tremendous career. And it's just like there's reality that hits. And also with him in particular, I'm concerned about the concussions. We've talked
Same.
about that for years now. And yeah, at some point, like that's a real problem. So there's a lot of things that they need frankly just some good luck. Now, a few people in the YouTube chat saying Mollendijk needs to be on the roster. We've talked about that. Agree, but also you gotta
temper expectations for
yeah.
what he's going to be as a 20-year-old kid.
Like I can see him coming in, helping, being solid, having a spot, but like you're probably going to need a little time before he's a difference maker. The way things usually go. Ernest T. Bass, you can't build a hockey team by constantly bringing in new free agents every year. No chemistry. They've dug themselves a big hole.
What a great name.
Well, I mean, they still have a great name. And they still have a core of people who have been here a long time together. I mean, Sissons, Forsberg, Saros, Yossi, I hear what you're saying, but like to me, when they brought in Ryan O'Reilly, that was a chemistry bump. That was a great chemistry move, and they went to the playoffs that year, right? So it's just making the right choices.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we go too far in these discussions. Did we go too far with the free agency stuff the day after they signed all these guys? Probably, right? Like we probably went a little too far. I think sometimes we go too far the other way in reverse. It's like, well, don't ever sign a free agent ever again because it can't work. And there have been situations where free agents have come in here and played pretty well. So keep that in mind. I mean, one of the biggest moves in franchise history was a free agent by the name of Paul Correa, who came in here and played pretty darn well for the Predators for a couple of years. So I don't know that I would have totally abandoned the free agency approach if you're the Predators moving forward. I mean, you can't do what you did last year every year. I think we all know that.
No. But again, that was, here's an opportunity. I've got the money. And again, I'm about to sign the goalie. And so the next few years, actually, we got to win.
Yeah.
Because I'm signing the goalie who needs to be great right now. And that still is the central potential total miscue that could cause a lot of change in this organization in the years to come.
Joe, very quickly before we get to the Rex rant, this is a question that really doesn't involve a whole lot of thought, but just your very quick synopsis. We're going to hear all this talk about the AFC teams heading into the preseason in the NFL of, is it finally Josh Allen's year to break through and get to the Super Bowl, Lamar Jackson, all these things. Should we all be slapped if we pick anybody other than the Chiefs to come out of the AFC? That's my question for you. Because nobody else comes out of the AFC other than the Chiefs.
I don't think so. I think the butt kicking they took, I know it was the Super Bowl, so gee whiz, it's the Super Bowl. But I still think the butt kicking they took, I look at all of last year and I see a team that obviously they've got the best QB and they find ways to win close games, but also a team that I think is pretty flawed and vulnerable. I really do. So I may need to, if this is the case, if your question is answered in the affirmative, then I may need to be slapped because I don't know that I'm picking them this year.
I think you may need to be slapped.
I think that's the Ravens are going to be in the Super Bowl this year.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one, but I put both of those in my mind ahead of the Chiefs.
I mean, look, this run has to end at
Slap,
some point, right?
Slap. At some point, yeah. Or again, like think about the Patriots. You know, they had multiple iterations, right? But
Right.
they also had years in between there where they were just so. And maybe we're looking at a little bit of a gap here before they can get it back with Mahomes. And we'll see about Andy Reid. How many more years is he coaching?
We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Take your thoughts, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Tune in for the Indy 500 race on 1025 The Game this Sunday. Coverage beginning at 10 a.m. Brought to you by Twin Peaks, home of the 29-degree beer. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robbie and Rexrode.
First of all, I ask better press conference questions than you do, and everybody knows.
I know. Oh, yeah, you do.
I didn't hear the coach say that's a good question, Joe, yesterday, but he did for me. I mean, consistently, my questions in press conferences lead to stories at ESPN.com and all this consistently, Joe, and you know it. I don't think Joe and Paul are so smart that they could have formulated some great question that would have got him to say anything more than what he was already prepared to say. I mean, what is so? Is your favorite breakfast cereal? Do you like Fruit Loops, or do you like Corn Pops, or do you? What was that tweet about? Like, what could they have done?
I guess maybe he is dumb.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every day here on the program. Joe, I forgot that exchange. That was very funny. My stories my questions consistently lead to stories on ESPN.com. Consistently.
Yeah, I forgot about that too. For the record, Jake Lyman, great intro. I did not ask for this. I did not bring him up. This is not me.
Sure you did.
Okay. I'm sitting here minding my own business. Boy, I asked the finest questions in the land. No one asked a question like my questions. My questions are so amazing. Oh, just truly beautiful. What did we do without him for a week? Okay. So
apparently almost folded as a station, according to him.
I know. Thank goodness we kept it together for a few days. So I'm gonna go back to this we talked about earlier. I don't, this is one of those situations where it's like, okay, there's some tweets and I'll interview and it's early, and so let's sort of see how things play out, and maybe it's not as dumb as it seems, but like I'm just gonna assume it's as dumb as it seems. It's college sports. This idea, again, Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, the power conferences have drafted a contract that would bind schools to new enforcement rules, require them to waive the right to sue over decisions, and schools not signing may risk conference eviction. Okay. So immediately you have Andy Staples calling Danny White and basically, crapping on the whole idea. Because again, there are different state laws. So this is what Danny White's quote was to Staples for On3.com. It says, quote, he's talking about the law in the state of Tennessee. Quote, it gives us protections from the legal and structural uncertainties of college sports. That's what he said to Staples. Here's what Staples writes after that. The law also pits those schools directly against their conferences. Dellinger reported, the plan requiring schools to waive their right to sue the College Sports Commission, the new entity created in the wake of the settlement. This is, again, the House settlement that we may get a final word on today. We'll see. We've been thinking we were going to get the final word for weeks/months now, but it might be today. Okay, back to the Staples. Quote, if schools don't sign, Dellinger reported they could face expulsion from their conference, risk being blackballed from playing other power conference programs. Would Tennessee risk losing membership in the SEC, or is this much ado about nothing, since many organizations require members to settle issues through arbitration rather than in court? If anything, it seems to be a warning to other states that might be considering a law similar to Tennessee's. But does the loyalty oath have any teeth? And if the conferences want to play this out even further, are they prepared to take on entire state governments? Let me just tell you. I need the names of the people who are so freaking stupid who are involved in college athletics. Because it kind of gets into a little bit of, because look, like for example, when I talk about conference commissioners, we've been critical of Greg Sankey on some things. Like Greg Sankey's a very smart guy. He's a very shrewd man. And when we got into this whole, and we're not done with it, but when we got into this whole thing with the what's the word, Robbie?
Allocations.
What's the word? Allocations. The allocations, the automatic bids that people are still talking about. SEC and the Big Ten get 4 apiece guaranteed, and then the Big 12 and the ACC get 2 apiece. So this is the 16-team model, which is just absolutely insane to me. But then he sort of, he kind of made it clear, gently, but he kind of made it clear that the AD's pushing for this. I've talked to an AD in the Big Ten who said, look, I understand, like, it goes against my instincts of competition, but also when you look at the financial situation in college athletics, if I know every year I got that money, I know we're getting 4 teams and we're getting that money. Right now I have to go with that. Okay. I mean, look, that's fine. Honestly, I just hope he doesn't get his way, right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so now I just need to know who thinks this is a good idea. All of this stuff, this clearinghouse, it's just Deloitte is just going to cash in on this idiotic thing. It's just not going to work, guys. And the idea of schools, again, the schools suing, you can go ahead and sign whatever the hell you want. Individuals, all these lawsuits that we see that have been crushing college sports, which again, the theme is the same thing. You can't limit their income. They are labor. You can't limit their income unless they collectively bargain that away. Okay? It's just the same thing. Individuals are going to keep suing people. And do you really think they're going to evict conference members over this?
No.
I mean, give me a freaking break.
They kicking Tennessee out of the SEC.
It's just so ridiculous. And again, so I need to know whose bright idea was it? Like, who really thinks that this is worthwhile? That is worth anybody's time? I have to know, because at some point we need to go ahead and name names on the dumbest people in athletics. Some of them are absolutely in positions of great power in college athletics.
It is amazing the way that this all continues to shake out. When I saw the threat of conference eviction, I literally just started laughing. I was like, yeah, okay. You guys going to kick out Tennessee and Vanderbilt if they don't from the SEC if they don't follow your rules? I don't think so, buddy. I don't think it's going to go down that way.
It's just mind-boggling. So here we go. We'll go through however long we need to go through the clearinghouse. And again, what I have to think, like what Nick Saban and some people want, is just let's stop with this craziness and let's just get to this. It's real NIL,
Yeah.
right? And then when all these schools, the top programs, are chasing the very, very best players, that one quarterback that everybody believes will win a national championship or whoever it is, then the money goes back under the table. That's what they want. The problem with that is that, look, there's just a lot more money when you have everybody basically able to negotiate against each other and agents involved in all the stuff above ground.
Yeah.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. They want to, but they can't. They're not going to be able to. It's going to fail miserably. And eventually we'll get to what we have been talking about for a while now, because that's the only outcome that could possibly make any sense.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Ben Arthur from Fox Sports. We'll get into the Titans and all things AFC South with him. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Jake Lyman here with you on this Tuesday morning, talking Titans and a little AFC South. And to help us do that, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Ben Arthur, who covers the AFC South for Fox Sports. Ben, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. It's good to be on. It's been a minute.
It has been. Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning.
No problem.
So, Ben, obviously a lot of excitement around here as it relates to Cam Ward. I'm curious, how do you evaluate kind of the situation he's walking into and the work that the Titans have done this offseason with their roster and surrounding Cam Ward?
Yeah, well, first of all, I like what kind of the Titans have done. I mean, this is the best offensive line, I think, at least on paper, right? We don't really know until pads and games and whatnot, right? But on paper, it looks like the best pass protecting offensive line they've had in a while. And I like what they've done at receiver. I mean, this isn't the best receiving group in the NFL by any means. I mean, it's probably a bit maybe below average, just on paper, but bringing in Gunnar Helm, drafting two receivers in Alec Ayomayor and Chim DK, and also bringing in Xavier Restrepo, someone that Cam is familiar with. So I really like what the Titans have done in that regard, and then bringing in a veteran receiver in Tyler Lockett, someone who can mentor him, and just in terms of telling him what a receiver likes at the NFL level, right? And so in that regard, I really like what the Titans have done. And look, it's going to be a work in progress, right? There's naturally going to be excitement when you have a number one overall pick quarterback coming in, but Brian Callahan and Cam Ward, they're going to have to get on the same page. I know that they're going to want to bring in some of the concepts that worked really well for him at Miami and incorporate it into the offense. And so that's going to kind of be an ongoing process. And I know Cam has talked about how just kind of like the foundation of Brian Callahan's offense, there are some similarities to what he's done in the past too, so that certainly helps. But I think all in all, they've done a decent job. And I know Mike Borgonzi has talked about this too, but like, you can't really fill all the holes that they've had. I mean, this is a team, as you guys know, right? Like this is a team that has had so many holes, and you can't maybe do everything in one off season, but I think that they've gotten a good start, right? Just with Cam coming in. So I'm interested to see kind of how it all comes together.
Do you think, Ben, that this is basically a make or break year, even though it's just year two for Brian Callahan, that whatever the evaluation is, whether it's Cam Ward's play, win-loss record, some combination, that he could be in serious jeopardy this year?
Yeah, I think it could be, just because of how we've seen Amy Adams-Strunk operate these last few years, just with the firings, right? But it shouldn't be, just because you have a number one pick quarterback coming in. One of the most important things for that quarterback is continuity, right? And I just think it would be a really big mistake if you kind of move on from him after, one year with Cam. I mean, you really, this is a long-term investment, right, that you have in Cam. And I think this is really an important point too. I think the Titans can make a lot of strides this year and still be really bad on just in terms of win-loss record, right? Like even if it's like 5, 6, 7 wins, I think that they could still show a lot of improvement, just like if Cam Ward, if his development is on track. So I would just hope from the ownership side of things that they don't cut the cord, so to speak, because I think as long as you see that positive trajectory and that it's not just a complete disaster, right? And that you at least make positive strides forward with the guy you believe is your franchise quarterback for the next 10, 15 years, whatever, then I think you should give Brian Callahan at least 2026 as well. That's the way I look at it, but just with how Amy Adams-Strunk has operated the last few years, it's really hard to kind of gauge what kind of the thought process would be in that regard.
So, Ben, obviously I think everybody would agree that this is still Houston's division to lose based on where the other teams are in the division right now. So as you look at the Texans, do you put them kind of in the same category as some of these other AFC contenders, be that the Ravens, the Bills, whoever, or how do you view what the Texans have done this offseason and where they're at?
For me, the Texans haven't really moved the needle. Just to be honest, like I think they're a good team, but to be on like that tier one of the AFC with those teams you mentioned, the Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, I just don't. I really don't see it right now. Like I'm not really a fan of what they've done on the offensive line. Obviously, they may not have Tank Dell for all of 2025. That's a very realistic possibility. Their defense is Super Bowl caliber. I think we saw it last season, and they added CJ Gardner-Johnson to the back end. They're going to be even better on defense, but offensively, I still have a lot of concerns, and I just don't think that protection is where it should be for CJ, and then it's going to be just a lot of Nico Collins, I feel, at receiver, and it's maybe going to be a bit of growing pains with the young receivers that they've brought in. And so I just don't know that with the moves they've made, with the additions combined with the subtractions, that they've really taken a big step forward. I just see them still being kind of a tier below those other top end teams in the AFC. Like you said, I still kind of pick them as the team to beat in the AFC South. Although I think maybe the gap has shrunk a little bit. But I mean, being the king of the AFC South doesn't really mean much if you're not competing at the highest levels of the conference. And so I really don't think, guys, that the Texans have moved the needle substantially upward, in my opinion.
So Ben, you're a young man, but when you sit and talk with James Gladstone, do you feel like you're at like a school giving a presentation to a sixth grader?
Yeah, he has just a ton of energy. Looks so young, right? But I think he brings in a lot of experience for them. Obviously coming from the Rams and Liam Cohen, I think that new kind of brain trust for them it's much needed, right? And I think a brain trust that's really committed to getting the most out of Trevor Lawrence. I feel like we've all been kind of waiting, right? Just with Trevor Lawrence, like to see, like, can he actually be what he was hyped up to be? And maybe he's not that player, right? And I don't think, anyone is kind of banking on him maybe being a generational quarterback anymore. I mean, we've seen flashes, but not that consistency. But I just think what they've done around him, that they've really committed to that. I mean, and Brian Thomas going into year two. I mean, he's an incredible player. He really is. And then Travis Hunter is obviously going to help out on offense, and they've made some changes to the offensive line. And just from how Trevor has talked about the offense being just the install, like just the changes and the amount of control he feels like he has, kind of jumped out to me. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how the Jags come together under Gladstone and Cohen and see what kind of their trajectory is. Their defense is still kind of a massive question mark for me, but I think if all goes according to plan, they could be a high scoring team in 2025.
Yeah, like Gladstone, obviously, he has the pedigree, and I think in a lot of cases, like I thought when he talked during the draft, I was somewhat impressed. That press conference with Travis Hunter, though, weirded me out a little bit. And I gotta say, man, I don't know how you feel about this. I've been I've been saying forever, like, I think the Titans should have taken Hunter. I think he's going to be great, but also I think he's destined to be a great cornerback in this league. And I don't know. I just worried that the Jags, and not that he can't help you on offense. I would do some of that too, but what do you think about their apparent plan to do it the other way, which is, offensive guy who helps some on defense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just unique territory, right? Just because, like, we haven't, at least in the modern era, like, a guy being fully committed to being two ways, and for that franchise who took him to be fully committed for him, doing both ways, it maybe eventually, right? But I think with the Jags' thought processes is he's kind of needed maybe a bit more development on offense, and the way their defense is actually not super complex. Their offense, at least the way they've talked, I mean, there's a lot more intricacies and complexities that they want to make sure that he can grasp before doing more on defense, which again, like I said, in their eyes, their defense isn't super complex. And I think that they'll be doing a lot of zone and whatnot for him. And so I think in their eyes, and again, not saying it's right or wrong, but I think to them, it makes more sense for him to fine tune some stuff offensively, just individually and in their system, as opposed to cornerback. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this is all going to work out. I don't know what the end result is going to be, so to speak. But I mean, like you said, Joe, like I do think he's going to be a special player in time. Like he's just too good to not be. Regardless, like how that looks, I don't know. And will the Jags fumble this? I mean, that they could, but I don't know. Just what he did in college, just the historic type of player he is, and just the motor, how he approaches the game is super, super unique. So I think this is going to work itself out one way or the other. But yeah, I don't really know. I don't have a good answer for that, other than, like I said, offensively, it seems like that there's a lot more that they want him to grasp before they kind of unleash him more on defense.
Well, Ben, it's going to be a fascinating year in the division. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning, and we will talk to you soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Ben Arthur from Fox Sports, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what Ben had to say. Coming up next, take your thoughts on the Titans in the AFC South. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This week's Nashville's best deal is Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon with a buy one, get one free admission. Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon, where parking, tubes, and sunscreen, always free. Keep that in mind. Get this great deal now at theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last. Appreciate Ben Arthur from Fox Sports for being with us in the last segment. Joe, I enjoyed that. That was, I think, Ben's very nice way of saying he doesn't think that the Houston Texans are very good and that they may be the best team of an absolutely buns division.
Yeah, the cinnamon roll among the buns. I don't know. Is that but not like a great one, just sort of like an old one.
A soggy cinnamon roll among the
came
buns.
out of the tube. So you're still going to choose that, but yeah.
Well, these other options have mold on it, so we'll go with the soggy cinnamon roll. Good stuff.
We didn't have time to get to. I was hoping to get a couple words on Indy Ben's favorite team and rip them, but we'll just do that next time because the Jags are fascinating. Like just I just hope they don't screw up Travis Hunter. Like he is a player who should not be. He should be an unscrew-upable player, and I'm still confident that he'll prove to be. But like, I understand the idea. The defense is simpler. It is true. Rookie corners, they can come in and play and be fine. So I guess from that perspective, okay, so spend some of this early time focused on offensive intricacies and finding a role for him, and while knowing that it should be pretty simple at corner. But I guess really to me it comes down to, okay, what are you doing in games? Like if you're just throwing him in there situationally, I just think that's a huge waste. He should be, and I forget who made this point, but I love this point that was made somewhere along the draft process of, a corner is kind of like a starting pitcher. Like, you're getting used to routes. I mean, there are route combinations in a game that are part of a game plan that repeat themselves. And then, then they'll come up with a counter or something to try to fool you. But like getting used to getting there play after play, battling, whether you're in man or zone, getting used to you got to be out there for the whole thing and then you hope like in the fourth quarter you make some key plays. I think he's just too good of a corner prospect to me to use this way. But look, if he ends up being a huge difference maker on their offense, I mean, look, it'd be amazing to see him actually be a two-way player. I just have my doubts because of the injury factor.
Yeah, I do too. Like, I mean, that's all he's doing right now. And the videos are coming out from, their rookie stuff down in Jacksonville, and he's running every route imaginable out there. So, I mean, they're definitely preparing him to play offense. I'm interested to see if it is just as simple as that of, he can step in and play corner immediately. So we'll get to that by the time training camp rolls around. Or if they're just going to view him as he's primarily an offensive guy, then every now and then we may throw him in on defense when we feel like we need him to. Like I'm really interested to see the way they view that.
Yeah, as Ben said, their D is not good. It seems to me like you'd love to have a difference maker on that side of the ball, change the math a little bit. Because I think he's good enough to be a feared cornerback as a rookie. I do. So hopefully they don't screw it up. But yeah, the Gladstone angle too is it's going to be fascinating. That's like I think you said. We had a heck of a time with Nick Sirianni. We had a heck of a time with Dan Campbell when they got introduced, and it was like, oh boy, these are going to be disasters. And we saw how those worked out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm leaving an open mind. I mean, look, there's no doubt that Jacksonville, like moving on from Trent Baalke, probably a good thing, man. Like getting done with that experiment is good. So look, they may have stumbled into something really good here with Liam Cohen and Gladstone and that kind of new age approach that they're trying to take. They both kind of sound like goobers to me when they talk in the press conference part of it. But again, always does, which is they'll have a random good year here or there, but by and large, they're bonds and are at the bottom of the division.
I mean, look, I think Jacksonville, and if you're a Titans fan, you hope this doesn't end up being true over time moving forward, but there's something in terms of just ownership there, right? That just from the top, They brought in some pretty smart people, and they made some bad hires too. I don't think Balky was a very good hire, but I mean, Tom Coughlin was a guy who knows how to win in this league and didn't work out. So you wonder about that, and obviously here, although Amy Armstrong has been a controlling owner during one of the best eras of Titans history, was that to her credit at all, or was it inevitable that she was going to blow that up too early and then spin wheels into a terrible era of Titans football? Frankly, Cam Ward is the guy who most needs to save her.
I would agree. We didn't even get to the Colts with Ben, but they got their own issues too. I mean, frankly, look at this. Like, it's got a chance to be a pretty special division this year in terms of how bad it is. It really does. And I know that, we've talked about the quarterbacks here before, and, the idea of Lawrence, Levis, Richardson, and Stroud, running around the league for the next 10 years. Well, Levis is definitely not working out in Tennessee. Doesn't look like Richardson's going to work out in Indianapolis. Lawrence, I mean, he's going to be the quarterback. I don't know how good he is, but he's going to be the quarterback in Jacksonville. And Stroud looks good, although he took a step back from year 1 to year 2. So, I mean, right now, Jacksonville, we'll see. They got a chance to be pretty bad again this year. Titans, as we know, have a chance to be pretty bad again this year. And I think that combination of Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson at quarterback for Indy could be pretty specially bad too. So you could be talking about a Houston team again that wins the division by default, and you look around the rest of the AFC and how much of a threat are they really?
Yeah, the other thing could be very bad. It's a great point you bring up. What we were so excited about. Oh, we at least got 4 quarterback stories to track. And like you said, 2 of them already been derailed. One of them totally derailed. One of them's pretty freaking close. But that's why if you look at the outlooks of the 4 franchises, I mean, at least the Titans have put the new name in. Yep. Now Cam Ward's in there. So, I mean, they have their potential answer. We'll see, but at least they have that answer. Stroud's definitely an answer. I mean, Lawrence is going to be the QB there for a long time, and you can do worse. You can win, I believe, with him. You have to really build a great team. What's the Colts' answer? What's their future?
Daniel Jones.
And if they're that'd be very surprising to me if he's any kind of long-term answer. So also, I think they're probably like a 7-win-ish team, maybe even 8, because they do have some good players. But then you're picking in the middle of the first round, and are you just going to go back to your veteran Band-Aid quarterback plan? Like, what are you going to do? I would least like to be them right now.
It's a great question. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. More of your thoughts to get to on the AFC South coming next. Plus, another philosophical question from Rexrode. Rexrode's had a heck of a philosophical run on the program today. We'll get more into that coming up next.
Deep thinker.
Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership with a buzz is always about great service. Joe Rexrode is in New York. That city's buzzing right now with the New York Knicks punching their ticket to the Eastern Conference Final. We talked about the Final Four in the NHL and the NBA yesterday. The Knicks getting it done against the Boston Celtics. We'll see if they can outlast the Pacers and punch their tickets to the NBA Finals. But it got Joe thinking about long-suffering fan bases. Who would you most and least like to see get a title? I know, Joe, people have very strong opinions on New York teams one way or the other. I frankly think it would be hilarious the longer that they don't win. But, Joe, your thoughts on the Knicks getting to this point and your philosophical question of the day of who you would most and least like to see get a title.
Well, yeah. So who were the long-suffering fan bases? You go back a decade ago, and actually then you go back a decade before that, right? So about 20 years ago, we finally saw the Boston Red Sox get off the schneid. I personally, even though I grew up hating both the Yankees and Red Sox, I hate the Yankees more. And I personally loved that comeback from 03. I actually just loved that team with Big Poppy. I just like some of their players, you know? So I was really happy for Red Sox fans to like finally win a title after however many freaking years it was back then. Then it's 12 years after that, you get the Cubs finally winning it. I feel like most of America was somewhat, obviously, what the White Sox fans and their poopy franchise were mad. Although it sucks that they won one 20 years ago. It still burns me. But anyway, but Pope Leo was happy. But Cubs fans, I don't know. You tell me, guys. I feel like the most of the world or the most of the sports world in America was like good for the Cubs fans, right?
I agree.
So who do we have now? We have,
the Browns.
You have the Browns and the Lions and teams like that. I think that the Lions last year, had they actually done anything except completely soil themselves and not get a single stop in an NFL playoff game at home, I think that a lot of the NFL, a lot of the sports world would have been cheering them on. It seems like people kind of have, people like Dan Campbell, right? And some of their players and just, the whole story. So I think that there's some momentum there, but they're done. That was their window. They're toast.
Wow.
You have the Knicks now. What do people feel about that? I personally, just as a general sports fan, and maybe it's just because they just haven't been all that good anyway. Like when my Pistons were dominating the league, the Knicks were a little minor annoyance, even with Patrick Ewing and those guys. I feel like I think it would be a pretty embraced run. I don't think they're going to make it because I don't think they're very good. I think the Pacers are going to beat them. But I feel like, and I could be wrong, I'd like to hear people weigh in on that. Who else out there would people love to see? The Maple Leafs, we all love to laugh at them. But would we love to, I still would love to see them win one. I personally would,
Oh, I think it's absolutely hilarious that they don't. I would love to see them continue to lose forever.
And you have made the point they're like we basically invented hockey. So what about the Canadiens? I mean, what they won at 93? 32 93. Years for them. Yeah. So what about them? To me, it's the same thing. But there's an arrogance that comes with that.
Yeah, I mean, those two would be near the top of my list of teams that I would like to continue to see lose. There's no doubt about that. I think it's hilarious when those two teams get put out, specifically Toronto, because they've been better lately. Like somebody on the text line says the Jets, they'd like to, Chris and Spring Hill, I don't know if you're saying that you'd like seeing the Jets lose or Jets win, but they have been losing so long that I don't find myself hating the Jets. I almost feel bad for the Jets with the way things have gone for them. I don't know that I hate the Maple Leafs, but it's more just like it is more like that Canadian fan base type thing. And maybe it just goes back to when I was a kid and they basically thought Nashville was the bug on their windshield and was well, what are they getting a hockey team for? And the fact that they cannot get out of the second round ever is pretty funny to me. So I continue to hate on the Maple Leafs.
So I feel like in most cases, it's sort of after a certain amount of time, and if you have a story like the Knicks right now, I feel like there's usually a lot of momentum unless there's just something about the fan base that really bothers you. You know, like Notre Dame. I just feel like a lot of the country is like, please never win a title. It's already bad enough with the Notre Dame fans and the overhyping and all this stuff. Like, no, thank you. Trying to think who else in like college sports. I mean, obviously Michigan was a similar to Notre Dame, overhyped every year.
Yeah.
You know, overestimated, too much attention, and they don't deliver. But then they actually had a great run. However, Harbaugh got it done. He got it done.
I mean, there's a team that like I would not mind that hasn't won that I actually wouldn't mind winning, and I was rooting for them this past playoffs in the AFC, and it didn't happen. But like Buffalo, like I don't hate Buffalo. I know Titans fans. There's some playoff history with Buffalo, so you've got obviously the Oilers blew the huge lead, and then you got the Music City Miracle. So there's some significant playoff history between Titans fans and Bills fans. But like by and large, I don't know that Titans fans walk around saying, who I really hate? The Buffalo Bills. Like they're not rooting for them, obviously, but like Josh Allen, likable guy. They've never won one. They've lost the 4 Super Bowls in a row. Like if Buffalo ended up winning a Super Bowl with Josh Allen, I would say, you know what? Good for them. Way to go.
I agree. I think Buffalo is absolutely, because it's a tremendous fan base, loyal, passionate, intense. And if you're a Titans fan, look, maybe one of them has drunkenly fallen on one of your folding tables at some point and destroyed it. So, maybe you have a little personal issue there. But I would think that most of the NFL, most fans would, maybe not some EFC's people. Obviously, if you have personal bitterness, and that's one thing, but I think most people would rally around them winning, especially if you're old enough to remember those 4 straight Super Bowls where they were great and they were definitely the better team in the first one, and they should have won that game. That was the best team in the NFL, and Norwood wide right. And then, of course, after that, they were just getting smoked in the Super Bowls. But you get your hopes up every year, and then get one of my college roommates was from Buffalo, so I had to live with that through him. Very tough. Rooting for you, Matt. Go Bills.
I mean, would people, Minnesota's never won one. Would people like really pull for Minnesota to get in there and win a Super Bowl? Or do people even care?
That's interesting. For some reason, I just don't care.
I'm the same. Like, I mean, look, I don't like Minnesota. Obviously, I'm a Packers fan. So you kind of have to take my opinion out of it. But like the people in general, like would people say, hey, you know what, good for Minnesota? Or do people even care?
I feel like they're one of those franchises that usually is pretty good. So you don't think about them as like the lovable losers like the Cubs or anything. But they're also not like the Bills, who have had these great teams, but they just can't get over the hump with Mahomes. They're just kind of there. And then, of course, there's the Bears, who should never, ever, ever, ever win another football game. We can all agree on that, right?
I think we can. Like, I'm looking in the NBA. Like, I mean, the Knicks are long suffering. Like, beyond that, like, I don't know. Like, how far do we have to go back for long suffering? Like, does anybody care that the Houston Rockets haven't won one since '94 or whatever it was? Like how far do we have to go back?
Good question. Yeah, I feel like the Knicks, and maybe it's just because of market.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another franchise that, my buddy and my editor and friend of the show, Mitch Light, is New Jersey, grew up diehard Nets fan, rooting for Michael Ray Richardson and stuff like that. And like he was so sure when they had that team a few years, with Durant and those guys, like it was finally the year. I mean, there's a franchise that's never won anything. And they got to, of course, the Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin teams got to the finals. Did they get there multiple times, or was it just the one year? They were one of the teams that lost to Kobe and Shaq in their 3 straight.
I think it was just one, I think.
Yeah, but like there's a team that, because I mean the Knicks, it's funny because like last night I actually watched half of the documentary on the 72-73 Knicks, which I guess it makes sense. It was on like ESPN2 because everybody's got Knicks fever everywhere. It's like, well, I mean, that is a legendary all-time team. They had an incredible run. Those teams with Willis Reed and Clyde Frazier and Dave DeBusschere and all those guys, Phil Jackson, high as hell out there trying to play hoops. But like that, like at least they have that. What do the Nets have? They have nothing. They have nothing in their history except for like false promises. So I think I would root for them.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Which long-suffering fan bases would you most and least like to see win a title? We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Jake Lyman here with you on this Tuesday morning. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. As David points out, Joe, on the top of the no list in terms of teams that you don't want to see win, long-suffering fan bases, the Cowboys at the top of the no list for David.
No one wants that. No one wants that. We can all agree, right? By the way, Jake's and my beloved Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
It's been 41 years, Ben. It's been 41 years, okay? I was a young child cheering on Bless You Boys. So I think we deserve one this year. Let's do it.
Let me ask you this. And this is, obviously this would be the answer if this qualifies for most people around here. But like, do Titans and Predators fans count as long suffering since they've only been around since the late 90s?
I think if you go quarter century, you're long suffering. Titans got, 25 years ago, they got to the one Super Bowl in franchise history. I think that's long suffering. Absolutely. And the Preds, they've gotten to the Cup final one time. Yeah, I think so. Not as long suffering as some. We've had multiple votes for the Mariners, by the way, which I wouldn't have thought of. But I will say, I remember, the Mariners team of like 2001, I want to say, with the height of the Ichiro era, dominant team that absolutely was destined to win it all and then flubbed it in the postseason. So hey, I'm not opposed to them.
The team was 116 and 46.
Good Lord. Unbelievable. Someone voting for the Phoenix Suns, I must say, man, the Suns, I've talked about it before, but that Barkley, KJ, Marley team of 92, 93, such a fun team to watch. And they should have won it all. They should have won it all, but they lost to Jordan and John Paxson shooting those threes in the corner. So that's just how it is. Hey, I do want to read Indy Ben.
Okay.
Because you know what, Robbie? I think Indy Ben is actually a huge problem for the Colts. Indy Ben represents the type of sunshine blower who allows mismanagement to just go unchecked. So this is like he wrote like 3,000 words. I'll shorten it. He said, the Colts could get their long-term QB in the middle of the pack next year. Deeper class, etc. He says, you guys forget football's a team sport, so only judging AFC South by its quarterbacks is not telling the whole story. Colts were a few plays to win the division 2 years ago with Gardner freaking Minshew. All they really need is that level of QB play, and they can certainly win the division. And I'd take DJ over Minshew at this point. When DJ had a competent running game with Saquon, he played well. When Saquon kept getting hurt, that affected his play, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, you're right. Gardner freaking Minshew. To win the AFC freaking South, Indy Ben, your team is cheeks. And if you want to be a team that aspires to win 8 games because you have some good players, you're just going to have average quarterbacks or worse, then that's fine. I would rather be any other franchise, especially with all the from the top, what's going on. You got a GM who's just a Teflon GM, and then you got people in the organization who, screwing things up with their stupid schedule release. I mean, come on. You are a sunshine blower, Andy Ben, and you need to stop. This is an intervention.
It's an intervention. I mean, look, the bottom line is it shouldn't be that hard to win the AFC South based on where other teams are right now. Like, I feel good for the Houston Texans right now, right? Like, they got to be looking around the rest of their division and be like, you know what? We might have some problems and revamped our entire offensive line, but look at the Titans and look at the Colts and look at the Jags. Like, it could change very quickly in this league. We know that, but if I'm a Texans fan, I'm looking around the rest of the division right now and saying, whoo, thank God we play in the AFC South.
Yeah, and you're also good enough to where you can at least look the other way. Well, like, again, last year, I saw a lot of people saying, like, Chiefs, Texans in the championship game.
Right.
But you're still, even though last year was disappointing, you're still good enough to look at the other direction and say, okay, how close are we to the top? I don't think they're terribly close, but at least, like, they can think of things like that. Everybody else in this division is just throwing slop at each other in the sandbox.
When they did win a playoff game last year, like, we always talk about the step back that the Texans took. And, clearly they did. I mean, they fired their offensive coordinator, right? So, Bobby Slowick went from a guy that we all thought was going to land a head coaching job to getting fired the next year in Houston. So clearly they were not happy with what went on the offensive side of the ball. They did win a playoff game. Like, they've won playoff games in consecutive years. So, maybe they're not as far away from the top as it seems. Although, again, when you totally revamp your offensive line, I'm really interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think they're like a 10-win team this year. Easily wins the division, I think. But, yeah, I'm not sure that they have quite enough. On the suffering fan base. LA Clippers is a great one. Someone just threw that on the text line. That's a great one. No
good.
doubt. I'd love to see that. Someone arguing with my Tigers prayer, saying, the Guardians have waited longer. My God, how long? Like Cleveland. When the heck did they win a freaking like it's like Vic Wirtz, 1954? Like what are we talking here? My goodness. The poor city of Cleveland. You poor suckers. Oh,
Cleveland.
And the Cavs this year could have won it all, and they're out.
Well, at least they got one. Like when the Cavs, Cleveland was in this conversation before LeBron and the Cavs won in 16. Like at least they got one. I tell you, the more I think about it, like Buffalo's had a rough go, man. They've only got two teams. They've got the Bills and the Sabres, but the Sabres have never won a cup. The Bills have never won a Super Bowl, and those are two like pretty passionate fan bases. Now the Sabres in the NHL in particular have been absolute dog water for a while now, and I don't know if there's any end in sight. Buffalo's got it rough with the long suffering part of it with the Bills and the Sabres.
Yeah, they had some teams there. The Dominator, they had some good stretch. They had some good teams, but nothing. They never did it. Hey, Cleveland, by the way, 1948. Woo, yeah, baby. And we talked about the Cubs earlier. Of course, that looked like it was going to be Cleveland breaking there. Not as long as the Cubs, but still really freaking long streak back in 2016.
Joe, we're very happy that the tick bite does not appear to be overly serious. You survived that. You're on the antibiotics. You made it to New York. Against all odds yesterday, you've come out on the other side, and you're better for it.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody's concern about my medical well-being. My little boo-boo seems to be healing right now. It's not even itchy, so the cortisone seems to be working. And, hopefully we don't have any gout flare-ups.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Kaharski keeps sending me information about gout. So there's some new thing where like a trial run where you can take some stuff and then you can eat all your favorite foods that normally give you gout. So I'm considering that. But no, thanks everybody. We're going to be okay.
Rexrode is going to be out the rest of the week. Got the other matters in New York to attend to. Kuharski will be with me the rest of the week. We are supposed to have Mike Tannenbaum on the show tomorrow. So looking forward to that. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Chasing Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.